How do you distinguish bold ambitions from dangerous delusions? How do you rope in the chaos that fuels your deepest desires? And what can happen if you lose control and plummet into madness? Let's talk about it. Hey everyone, it's Charles. How are you today? Pokemon Sun and Moon is dressed up as little more than an easygoing tropical vacation for Pokemon fans. But bubbling beneath the innocent veneer of Power Ranger moves, rideable animals, and jacked extraterrestrial mosquitoes, we find ourselves grappling with a broken, malevolent mind ready and willing to bend Alola into her own twisted fantasy land. The adversary in question is none other than Lusamine, mother gone mad of Lily and Gladion, wife of missing in action Moan, and president of the Ether Foundation, an organization that protects Pokemon in need while researching Ultra Wormholes and the Ultra Beasts lurking within. The heartrending tragedy of Lusamine is one of Pokemon's darkest stories, and the plan today is simply to dig deeply into just exactly how one crazy woman could take an entire region to the brink of destruction. But before we begin, I recommend getting waterproofed for the downpour, because nobody likes wet feet. Whether it be from wading through manly tears while watching me talk about tragic characters, wading through nasty slush, or goopy puddles, the good news is that regardless of your specific predicament, you can count on Vessi's 100% waterproof sneakers to keep your feet flying dry. This winter, I'm especially loving the Vessi Stormbursts, as they have all the features of a rubber winter boot built into a sneaker, meaning that they are waterproof and warm, but lighter and more comfortable than boots, super easy to slip on and off, equipped with rugged outsoles for extra grip in wet or icy conditions, as well as an inside lining to keep your feet toasty, and they're not just water resistant, but 100% waterproof thanks to Dymatek's dual climate knit material that keeps your feet crispy in the cold, cool in the heat, and dry in every month of the year. I've been wearing my Stormbursts for the big nights out, for snow shoveling, and I'm sure you'll love them too. So pick up a pair of Stormbursts or another nifty style of Vessi sneakers over at vessi.com/charusharu to save 15% off your entire order. And with that said, enjoy the new kicks and let's kick off today's chat. To quickly frame Lusamine's insanity against Pokemon Sun and Moon's narrative backdrop, the game begins with us, the player, and our mama in the midst of a move from Kanto to Alola. And in the opening cutscene, we also see a mysterious young girl escaping a mysterious lab with a mysterious Pokemon in a not that mysterious bag. A girl and a Pokemon who we later defend from a flock of attacking Spearows on Melemele Island's Plank Bridge 3 months later following our arrival in Alola. The girl, Lily, turns out to be Chaddad Kukui's lab assistant and a key character in the story. The Pokemon, nicknamed Nebby, turns out to be a powerful creature from another dimension with the ability to force open ultra wormholes that allow travel between distant worlds. And although in classic-ish Pokemon fashion, we soon shift gears to embark on a quest to defeat Alola's 4 island trial masters with our sights set on becoming an island challenge champion, the story runs much deeper than a simple quest to be the very best. As along the way, a nasty family feud bubbles to the surface, a criminal organization known as Team Skull does bad things, an angsty boy with french fries strapped to his head straddles the line between good and evil, and before long we are invited to Ether Paradise, a sanctuary for abused Pokemon, where we meet Ether Foundation President Lusamine, the point at which the game's story kicks into high gear. At the superficial level, Lusamine is a passionate philanthropist striving to help out pocket monsters in need at Ether Foundation's Pokemon Sanctuary. But during our conversation at the Foundation, something unusual occurs that causes her facade to slip just enough for us to see that she is, in fact, one wacky gal. That is, when an unusual jellyfish-like creature suddenly materializes out of nowhere, attacks us, then retreats through a wormhole, rather than reacting with simple astonishment, Lusamine's face lights up with the expression of an unhinged lunatic, just for a second, before she regains her composure and rationalizes her fascination with the creature. That creature we just saw was undoubtedly an Ultra Beast, an unknown being from another dimension that suddenly appears from the Ultra Wormhole. It looked like it was suffering, like it pained to be in this strange place. I can't bear to see that happen. I will save it, and I will love it. Her intense reaction to the encounter was eccentric to say the least, but her intentions still seemed benevolent enough, and with that, she encourages us to press onward to Ula Ula Island to continue our island challenge, and we depart from Ether Paradise. At this point, setting aside that single glimmer of insanity, we had seen the same Lusamine that the outside world regarded as a role model to all, the altruistic caretaker dedicated to protecting Pokemon from far and wide. But the real Lusamine, the monster beneath the mask, is enough to make a haunter's hair stand on end. And sure enough, later in the story, when Lily and Nebby are bizarrely kidnapped by Team Skull and dragged back to the Aether Foundation's artificial island, we find ourselves teaming up with Lily's brother on a rescue mission that unravels the charade. Rather than as welcomed guests, this time we enter Aether Paradise as marked intruders on a hit list. And only after battling through a gauntlet of attackers do we finally arrive at Lusamine's room to find her with Lily, and to discover the unbound madness lurking beneath that moment of insanity at our first meeting. Apparently, Lusamine intends to force Nebby the Cosmog, the Pokemon who Lily had been protecting all this time, to force open a number of Ultra wormholes through which the Jellyfish Beast and various Ultra Beasts from the other side will be able to make their way to Aether Paradise. The tragic catch is that the stress to Nebby's body will most likely kill it, an outcome clearly at odds with Lusamine's supposed mission to shield the world's Pokemon from harm. Or rather, at odds with the mission of the Lusamine we thought we knew. And all Lily can do is beg her mother not to sacrifice her friend for the sake of the jellyfish beast creature that she's become so fixated upon. But Lusamine bitterly deflects her daughter's plea. Calling me mother? I don't have any children. Certainly not any wretched children who would run off and reject my love. You are not beautiful enough for my world. But fine, since you're here anyway, you can watch me summon my sweet beast. And then you can leave. You're right. It probably will die, because I'm going to force it to use its power whether it wants to or not. Maybe if you had really been a daughter to me, I would have listened to you. Too bad. She does not feel even a shred of remorse about sacrificing an innocent life in her crackpot scheme to pull dangerous Ultra Beasts from other worlds into an unsuspecting Alola. Following the shock and awe revelation, Lusamine exits the room via a secret door, and we follow her, only for the situation to take an even more sinister turn as we arrive in Lusamine's trophy room and find ourselves looking on in horror at containers upon containers encasing Pokemon frozen in place as if they were game animals mounted on a wall. What do you think? Lusamine asks. It's my private collection, my precious babies. They will all be preserved for eternity here. As if she hadn't already done enough to assert herself as a villain, Lusamine's warped approach to Pokemon preservation adds yet another layer to the perversion. But somehow, it actually gets worse. My poor beast, she says. What confusion, what rage it must feel arriving in this strange world. I think I will let it express
all its fury upon the Alola region as it will.
Lusamine is not just a sicko to the Pokemon and people in close proximity to her, but apparently she is ready and willing to put everyone in Alola on the chopping block for no good reason at all. And after this proclamation, she descends into a hateful tirade directed at Lily and Gladion before forcing Nebby to open Ultra wormholes across Alola, portals of chaos through which Ultra Beasts began flooding in, and then sicking her Pokemon on the group to silence us once and for all. But, of course, we managed to get the upper hand in battle, forcing Lusamine to flee through an Ultra wormhole with Team Skull leader Guzma in tow just before it closes, leaving us amidst the horrors of the trophy room to ponder how to get into Ultra space and how to end the insanity of Lusamine before Alola and perhaps the entire world are destroyed by the Ultra Beasts. On the bright side, Nebby miraculously survived the Aether Paradise incident. We do discover a potential method of cracking into Ultra Space by way of an Alolan legend, and not to beat around the Bulbasaur. Once the requirements of the legend are met, Nebby surprises everyone by evolving into its powerful final form, busts open a wormhole into Ultra Space, and the search for the ambitious in all the wrong ways psychopath begins. The concept of ambitious visionaries walking a fine line through the deep is a recurring theme in Pokemon games. The deep being the dangerous cave within and the uncertainties ahead into which we all must venture to unlock our potential, to push our limits, and to bend our dreams into being. And the fine line being the symbolic intersection of reality and fantasy, order and disorder, satisfaction and ambition, and sanity and insanity, upon which we need to tread carefully lest we teeter off into the all-consuming chaos of the deep. losing ourselves in the pursuit of greatness. If we know anything about Pokemon antagonists, it's that even the most multifaceted villains quickly lose their footing and tumble into the deep. They become unhinged, they go too far. They lose themselves to ambition. They slip into hell. And sure enough, what we find in Ultra Space is not a pretty sight. Shortly after arriving in the dark interdimensional realm, we encounter a terrified Guzma who warns us, "I may be the Team Skull boss, and I've never been scared of nothing or nobody, but that lady, she's on another level. She's way far gone. She lost her mind over these Ultra Beasts. There's no talking to her, no reasoning with her. She's just gone." And when we finally track down Lusamine and her coveted beast, its name revealed to be Nihilego. She hurls abuse at Lily, claims that she has found the real paradise, wherein the only thing that exists is the love between her and Nihilego, and shocks everyone by physically merging with the Ultra Beast into a terrifying symbiotic entity straight out of Lovecraftian horror. Lusamine had at last successfully bonded with UB-01, Nihilego, transcending what it means to be human, becoming more powerful than ever, and ready to set the final phase of her plan in motion. But at what cost? She had strayed from the fine line. She had gone too far. She had lost herself. And it was in this delirious state that she, or it, or they unleashed their full fury upon us. And the final battle for Alola began somewhere out there, deep within the deep. And after a long, drawn-out battle, Nebby steps in to cut through the darkness, binding Lusamine and Nihilego as one, separating them once and for all. But having sacrificed both her physical being and mental faculties to the deep to venture beyond the constraints of humanity, only for the power of chaos that had filled her veins to be stripped from her, the broken Lusamine collapses into a comatose husk. Yes, the group escapes from Ultra Space to safety, Lusamine in tow, and Lily vows to aid her mother on the road to recovery. But we never do see her again. She'd entered the deep, she had succumbed to chaos, and she did not return. At least, not for now. Before we unpack what the heck the tragedy of Lusamine even means, to recap the horrors that our favorite Yummy Mummy maniac wrought upon the world. She abused her children as tools to her own ends. She disowned Lily and McDonald's head as soon as they pushed back against her insanity. She hired a criminal gang to abduct her own daughter and Nebby. She forced Nebby through an excruciating experience that was likely to kill it. She unleashed the horrors of dangerous aliens from another dimension upon Alola. She froze several Pokemon alive in trophy cases, and she attempted to off a bunch of children in cold blood, twice. And you thought that Ash Ketchum's dad was a bad parent. But the real question is, how did things even get to this point? How could Lusamine fall so far from the otherwise beautiful ideals of the Ether Foundation? And exactly what keeps us from losing ourselves to our deepest, darkest desires? When playing Pokemon Sun and Moon, one of the big issues we are left to contemplate is whether Lusamine did what she did because Nihilego implanted her with its own dangerous designs, or whether she did what she did merely because she found herself with the power to act out her own pre-existing desires. As far as I can see, the answer is almost entirely the latter. The key elements of Lusamine's destructive vision and the disposition to carry it out were there before she ever got wrapped up with Nihilego. Perhaps her madness was accelerated by the loss of her husband, but as far as we know, the seeds of evil have been growing for years. And this position is reinforced when Ether Branch Chief Wiki provides us with essential information regarding Ultra Beast number 1, shortly after Lusamine escapes to Ultra Space. When Nihilego latches onto a host, it does not manipulate its actions directly. Rather, it awakens the host's own capabilities and boosts them to an extreme extent in order to protect itself. It injects the host with a sort of neurotoxin to achieve this effect. This neurotoxin of Nihilego's is incredibly stimulating and inspires feelings of extreme excitement and a lack of inhibition in its host. In other words, anything or anyone that Nihilego latches onto will have its native skills forcibly activated to their fullest extent and will then act as it naturally desires to. Indeed, Nihilego didn't make Lusamine evil, it only enabled her by boosting her capabilities and eroding her inhibitions, and all we could do was watch as her untempered urges to achieve, to control, and to protect overwhelmed rationality and morality, eventually multiplying into insanity and sending her crashing into the dark waves of the deep. Perhaps the best way to describe Lusamine's tragic tale of how a person can teeter straight into hell and drag everyone along with them when the ruinous excesses of their personalities are let loose on the world is as a tale of the id versus the ego. Defined by the father of psychoanalysis and inappropriate mom memes, Sigmund Freud, the id, the ego, and the superego are three distinct but interacting forces of the human psyche. The id is the instinctual component of personality that creates our bodily needs and wants, emotional impulses, and desires. In contrast, the ego exists to direct the id's urges in a way that is actually beneficial to us over the long run. It is a regulating mechanism that enables the individual to delay gratifying immediate needs and function effectively in the real world. In other words, we don't have complete control over our instincts, but we can certainly direct them to either inferior or superior outcomes. Lastly, we have the third component of Freud's structure, the superego, which monitors the ego's actions and disciplines or penalizes it with feelings of guilt, anxiety, and inferiority when it misbehaves. And in the story of Lusamine, we see what happens when one's rationality and morals are stripped away, leaving primal urges to run rampant. Of course, the name of the creature that she fuses with makes the reference to Freud's forces crystal clear, as the nihil and ego of Nihilego presumably come from the Latin terms for nothing and I. I am nothing, no ego. In other words, Nihilego symbolizes the absence or annihilation of the ego, and the superego along with it. And thus, Lusamine's tragedy is a clear-cut warning as to what can happen when we cut loose reason and inhibitions to wander the darkness of the deep with nothing but our instincts, as Nihilego didn't actually hurt Lusamine. In fact, it only set her free. And every one of us is constantly at war with ourselves as the ego and the superego, the voices of reason and morals, struggle to direct the id such that our instincts do not lead us to ruin. There are many ways in which we can make ourselves vulnerable to the whims of the id, and the chaotic freedom of the void is waiting to devour our souls at a moment's notice. Turning into an evil, interdimensional symbiote is probably the extreme scenario, but if there is anything in the tale of Lusamine that we can practically apply to our own lives, it's the wisdom that in day-to-day living we should temper our urges with a rational mind, a moral code, and actions that create rather than destroy. So be careful of the toxins, keep the id in check, and if you find yourself on the edge of chaos, if you are about to wander too far into the deep, remember that Pokemon tried to warn you, and take that silly jellyfish off your head.